Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at how we can do a really complex query using subqueries, a named query, and even making it so I can sort information first before I do a query on it, because I can manipulate some of the limits of SQL by using the idea of using a named query inside my structure. So we have our example code right here on screen. And so I have a with sorted as, and then I have a subquery right here. So it's a sorted subquery, but it's defined up above the structure using the with as notation that we have right here. And so this allows me to define a query in advance. So as you can see right here, I've got a scalar subquery to get the average of the grades, and my gr.numeric grade is greater than that. So I want to get the bigger grades, of course, because I'm looking for the high performing zip codes. This is something where we actually might use a database to solve a real world problem. We're solving something that we want to analyze. Maybe, for example, not exactly the high performing zip codes, but the high performing cells categories or something like that. Or we want to define the best districts in our cells region or something like that. This is something that businesses really use databases often to solve. I want to find that information out so I can ask a question that can do this. And so I've just got my regular scalar subquery right here, select average from a numeric grade. And I have that from grade where grade type is final, because I only want the final grades being greater than average. That's what I really care about. And I want to look at those average of those grades, and I want to make sure that their grade type is greater than that, and it's a final grade too, because I only want the final grades. I'm looking at this. And then we get the student ID and that associated grade with it, so I can make sure I identify them on that. So I want to get those student IDs from that information. And then I'm going to do that with sorted sub, because I also have that here. I have that order by clause. And remember, order by can only be executed at the last part. You can't do inside a subquery. And so by using this with as, instead of running this as a subquery, it's running this as a named query up above the actual query itself. So it's a structure on its own. It's like a view, which we'll cover another time. But that's right here. I have a named structure right here, so I have a value that I can actually refer to and reference, because it's now a reference piece of data, and I can even sort it, which is very helpful when you're doing, say, analysis things, and you want to get sorted data before you move on to the next step. And then we go to our actual query right here. So I have select student.zip from student.stu and enrollment ENR. And I'm going to join that to the enrollment and then join it to grade. I have my standard 2-level on because it has 2 different primary keys it has to work with. I want to make sure to limit my data properly. And then inside that where, I'm going to do grade type code as a final, because again, I'm looking only at finals right here. And then I want to make sure the student's ID and numeric grade is in that previously defined subquery. And what I'm going to do right here is on that subquery, I'm even going to limit further. I'm going to use that row num. And so on row num, what it does is it says, hey, it's a little hidden value in there. And I want to say, I only want to get the top 10 in this case, because 1 through 10 right here, row num less than 11, that's how I can actually get those top 10 values, which you might have seen maybe on a website or some little clickbait stuff, but I want to get the top scores. And so by doing that row num less than 10 on an already sorted piece of data, we've got that information. We have what we really need for that. And so now I can get the zip codes from that, and where I have that grade student ID and their numeric grade are both inside that sequence. And so I have that information right here so I can identify how that works. So let's go ahead and let's take this inside our SQL developer and let's run this actual sequence. So here we have the code inside our lovely sequence right here. And so because it's that with as, if I hit the minus sign right here, boom, it closes the entire thing, because that with as is that whole little blurb. So I can't really collapse just this subquery, but we have it right here. So if I run that subquery just on its own, make sure I only get the subquery, boom. And boom, I've got 93 rows selected. As you can see, it's sorted. So I've got the top 10 would be up here. And so I have that lovely bit right here to the order by, so that 99 right there says, oh, these are the top scores. So I have that right there. So I'm only going to get the top ones out of that. But then I don't want to have the student ID as part of my information, because I don't want to expose that information to the student. So that's where we go down to the subquery right here, the second half of the query, where I want to get the student's zip code. And that zip code doesn't explicitly identify all my students, but it identifies those top performing districts that we really want to identify. And so that's where that student zip right there. And because the student zip is only available if I match the zip to the zip code data, that's where I have my student.zip, and I can match that there from enrollment and then to grade. And then because that now has that student ID, I can reference that student ID down here, and that's where it goes inside that subquery, matching the student ID and that numeric grade that we already have a match. So I make sure I have the correct grades with that. And what I'm doing right here is a multi-row, multi-column subquery, because I have a multi-column. I separate with commas right here. So I have a field I'm looking for, comma, then the next field I'm looking for inside that subquery. And it's multi-row, so I need to use the in operator. Remember, when we're using the idea of an exact match over multiple rows, we use the in operator to do that, because it returns a set of exact values. And I'll see, does this exact pair match? Yes. Does this exact pair match? No. Okay, then I skip that out. And so that's what we're doing for with that. And so I have select everything from my sorted sub, that named subquery we have up above we just looked at. And so I can have a sorted piece of data. Because I've referred to it in that with as, I can do a full level of structure on that, and I can work on it and do some cool stuff with it right there. And then because it's sorted, by using that row num is less than 11, that means I get the top 10 rows, which means I get the best data I possibly have. And so this is how, if I run this full query right here, and when I just select this from less than 11, I hit play. No, it doesn't know. I don't know what that table view doesn't exist because I don't have that right there. When I run that full query as a whole, I've got 10 rows selected right here. And so my top performing zip codes are listed right here. So I have my top zip codes in order right now from this information. I've got my top 10 zip codes because I have that information matched right there. So I have my great way to sort this, a great way to use information. I can actually understand what I'm looking for inside this, and I can then organize the information inside that structure appropriately. And so that's a cool way you can do some really wonderful things, making sure we have the information appropriately maintained across that data structure. So again, I'm using that with as, and that with as allows me to identify a predefined structure. I can even do multiple structures on there inside that, and that'd be something you can do for even more advanced queries. I use a scalar subquery right here. I use a multi-row, multi-column query right here with the 2 parameters I'm working for on that. And then look inside the results by selecting everything from that subquery I've already named before. And that's a great way I can do some cool stuff. I hope this is useful and helpful. You can do some really cool and advanced features with this, and hope you can continue on doing amazing subqueries inside Oracle databases and other fun stuff. Thanks again. Cheers and have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.